Welcome, everybody. We got a nice, good-looking crowd here.
Wow.
Das. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, John. Hey, Chris. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
Hey, Ian.
Hello.
Gil, Juan, Kat, Simon, Kyle, Steve. Looking good.
This is starting to sound like the old romper room thing where it's like, hey, hi to this person, hi to this person. There's a lot of people here. Let's see. I'm going to keep track on who keeps coming in. So as folks are here, just let you guys know, as Ryan's finishing up the finishing touches on his presentation here. So my name's John. If we haven't met before, you've seen me around. I'm one of the mentors here at CodingNomads. I do Python and Java. Actually, one of my students is actually in here, which is kind of nice. And we've got a lot more people coming in. So every 2 weeks, if you don't know, we do these tech talks. We have people talking on all sorts of different topics. Today, we are very happy. I'm very pleased that our co-founder, Ryan, is going to be giving, so he's going to be giving a talk on all the tricks that you need to know in order to get a coding job. That's part of it's actually the reason I think why everyone is here.
Maybe should I do auto scope for this then?
Uh-oh. Yep. If you got questions, you can drop them into the chat. So we'll have a chat down there, and you can drop your questions in there. Myself and Ryan will be here. Jared's here. We have Ian and Kim here as well. We'll be monitoring the chat. If there are questions, then we can, we'll take some questions. There will always be time for questions at the end as well. I'd like to make sure that, everybody gets a chance to get their questions. If we don't get to them, then we'll definitely go ahead and make sure that they're answered in the forum as well. There will be a recording of this made after everything is done, so you can look for the link to that once we're completed. Be up in a day or two. Just takes a little time to get it up there, and that is about it. So without further ado, Ryan, if you are ready, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute myself. At some point in time, you're going to see me drop off. No worries. I unfortunately have another appointment to go to, but everybody else is still going to be here ready to help out. So that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure. Welcome, everybody. So I'm essentially going to try to keep my talk to 20 to 30 minutes, and then save 20 to 30 minutes for us to just chat and take questions and just discuss, because this is obviously a popular topic. The whole premise of Coding Nomads is to help people get skilled and get jobs, right? And sometimes the getting jobs can be harder than the getting skilled part. And so my goal here is just to share some wisdom and knowledge that I've learned over the years. And so without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen, and let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so how to land your first software development job with me, Ryan Desmond. Who am I? I'm a former bartender who got a degree in computer science once upon a time, primarily so that I could work remotely and get paid well. That was my initial motivation. I realized that I wanted to stop working so much manual labor. I worked as a landscaper. I worked in agriculture. I worked as a bartender. I was getting tired of working with my hands. I wanted to kind of more of a mentally challenging and stimulating job. And I also knew that the kind of 9 to 6 formal corporate job was not that inspiring to me. I wanted the ability to work remotely. And so I kind of had this idea that learning software development might be a path, right? The good news is that it was a path. I ended up getting a computer science degree many years ago, convinced my way into my first job, wholly underprepared. I feel extremely confident saying that, for instance, our courses prepare people much, much better than my computer science degree did for my first job. But I convinced my way into my first job, spent 10, 12 years as a software developer, kind of working my way up the ranks before co-founding Coding Nomads with my lovely wife and partner, Kim, back in 2016. So, and kind of the reason I am sharing this is that I realized that I have done many, many technical interviews, and I've also, as an applicant, and I've also done a lot of interviewing, trying to get, trying to find good candidates for companies that I've worked at. And so the idea of this chat is just to share some of that knowledge that I've learned. So what will we discuss in this chat? Section 1, we need to get skilled, really skilled. Section 2, we need to get experience. Section 3, we need to get our foot in the door. And section 4, we need to get hired, right? So section 1, getting skilled, really, really skilled, right? Here we have a I kind of just want to talk about what the learning journey often looks like, right? And there's all different types of development jobs. There's web developers, there's core software developers, there's API developers, there's network engineers, there's data scientists, there's machine learning engineers, right? So I can't necessarily speak to every single one of these paths, but in our experience here at CodingNomads, typically the learning journey looks something like the first 1 to 3 months, still very much a beginner. We're learning things like loops, object-oriented programming, input, output, core syntax of the Java programming language, the Python programming language, whatever programming language you choose. And step 2, the intermediate section is kind of where you start to learn about databases, APIs, third-party libraries, because as soon as you get beyond the core syntax of any, I'm going to use Java, which is kind of my wheelhouse. As soon as you learn the Java programming language, the next step, right, is to learn how to utilize this massive and truly massive ecosystem of open source projects, right? There's literally tens of millions of them. And each and every one of them are essentially libraries that make our jobs as developers easier, right? So for instance, as a good example, let's say I use this one commonly, but let's say I want to use AWS SES, simple email service, to send emails, right? This is something we do at CodingNomads. We want a professional way to send emails from CodingNomads, and Amazon AWS has a service called SES, simple email service. And they've created what's called an SDK, a standard development kit. It's essentially just a Java library that has all of these classes and methods and functions that make it my job as a Java developer easier to integrate with their service, right? And so by writing maybe 20, 30 lines of code, I can now integrate with AWS's SES service rather than needing to write thousands of lines of code on my own, right? And that's just a very simple example of which there are literally tens of millions of others, right? So step 2 is kind of learning how to integrate. Once we know the core syntax, we need to integrate with third-party services like databases, like RESTful APIs, and using third-party libraries, SDKs, etc. And this is the same no matter what kind of primary language that you're using. And this typically is kind of the months 3 to 6. And this timeline is for somebody that's studying in a very dedicated fashion, at least 15 to 20 hours per week, right, of consistent study. After 6 months, you're really starting to get into that more advanced software development realm. In a lot of the courses that we teach here, you're doing authentication, you're working with OAuth 2, you're deploying your applications, you're able to build complex dynamic software, and you're able to pick up a very good example with a former student. She studied with us for 6-7 months, and then we took a small break. And during that small break, and she had studied Java and Spring with us, during a 2 to 3 week break before we got into the job search mode, she went and essentially learned Python and Flask and built a fully functional dynamic budgeting application by herself in a couple of weeks in Python and Flask, even though we had spent the last 6-7 months studying Java and Spring. Essentially, she'd gotten to that big aha moment where she had realized that it's just a matter of documentation, it's just a matter of practice, it's just another language, it's just another framework, it's just another service, it's just another tool. And honestly, that's kind of the spot that I look for in the people that I work with. That tells me that they're really ready to be applying and to really start working as a professional software engineer. And this is kind of the 6-month plus. And then the last point here is professional. And one thing that can't be forgotten in the realm of software development is that it's really one of those the more you know, the less you know kind of topics, right? I've been in the industry now for many years, and I feel like I almost know less now than I did, 10 years ago when I thought I knew everything, because there's just so much to learn. And as a professional software engineer, and I say this in a positive way, not in an overwhelming way, there's a never-ending opportunity to get better and to learn more and to get more advanced. And it's not necessarily about always keeping up with the latest shiny object, the latest framework, the latest package, the latest whatever. If anything, I actually steer away from that, what I call shiny object syndrome, because those brand new things, except for sometimes in JavaScript, really aren't being used in mass in the professional world, right? Java is a great example. The professional world is still by and large using Java 8, even though that was released years ago. And there's Java 11, there's Java 15, there's Java 18, there's all these newer versions. But it takes literally years for the professional ecosystem to catch up to the latest and greatest. And so I would say, don't really worry about always feeling like you need to always be on top of the latest and greatest thing, because even though there's some articles posted about it, even though there's some hype, there's probably 15 people in the world that are actually using it and 3 of them that are trying to use it professionally, where what you need to be learning is skills that millions of people are using on a day-to-day basis and millions of applications are built with, so that you can get hired to maintain them, extend them, and build new ones. So moving forward in the whole idea of getting a job, right? It's a lot easier to get somewhere when you know where you're going, right? And so we really put a lot of emphasis on defining your path. What is your primary career ambition? If you're really ambitious and, to the second point, inspired about a certain industry or topic or type of job, or for one person it might be finance, for another person it might be conservation, for another person it might be social networking, for another person it might be something else. But if you can, and not everybody needs this, but if you can find an ambition that you really want to strive for and point yourself in that direction, and essentially choose to say, I'm not going to stop until I reach this goal, right? And it's going to take some time, but if you just don't stop until you get there, right? It's, I would say, pretty critical in the job hunt and the path to kind of switching careers or getting that first job as a software developer. So some of the most important things to really think about are, what is my ambition? What is my inspiration? What would I really, really like to do, right? Because you're going to do a better job at something that you're really inspired by or excited about, right? What are the impediments? What are the roadblocks holding you back, right? I identify them and then find a way to work around them, to get them out of the way, right? Identify and these could be I just don't have enough time, right? So then finding a way to get rid of that roadblock would be, what is 1 hour every day that I could set aside for this instead of watching that show on Netflix? Or what is a one day where I can squeeze in 2 or 3 hours of study, right? Is identifying those impediments. Much like software development, you have to identify the problem in order to find the solution, right? The next big question is, what technical skills do I really need to get this role? And this varies from role to role to role. And we can kind of talk about that a bit later. What are some actionable steps that we can take right now and continue taking every day, every week, every month, until we meet this goal? And an analogy that I use all the time is, I live here in California. I do not live very close to the ocean. I'm let's say 200 miles east of the coast. But if I just turn west and I start walking, it might take me some time, but I will reach the ocean, right? And I say this very silly analogy to a lot of people who are looking for jobs, because when you're 1 mile or 1 kilometer in, or 10 or 20 or 100, it can feel like you're just walking forever and you're not going anywhere. And it's really important to know that you're heading west and just keep heading west, right? So find those actionable steps, find that path and follow it. And then, one of the most important things that you can be doing is building proof, right? And one of the best ways that you can show your proof is GitHub. And I can't speak to this enough, right? And I'll come back to the previous slide here in a second, but who would you hire? If you're a hiring manager, and if you're familiar with GitHub, this is just the graph that shows how active somebody is on GitHub, how often they're pushing code to GitHub. And if you got 2 applications and you're the hiring manager or you're the senior developer or lead developer at a company, and they both had a link to their GitHub profile, and candidate A's profile looked like the one on the top and candidate B's profile looked like the one on the bottom, you don't need to read or see anything else, right? You want to talk to candidate A and you're going to hire candidate A, right? Candidate B is just not even going to make it. They're probably not even going to get an email back, right? If you're just now building up your GitHub profile, it's not the only thing that matters, but it matters a lot, right? That you can prove your work. And GitHub is essentially one of the #1 places that you can do that. And you get one of these green dots every day that you push code. And the more code you push, the darker the dot, right? So one of the best things that you can be doing at any time is coding and pushing your work to GitHub. Prove your work, right? And oftentimes people are hesitant to push code that maybe isn't that great or has bugs in it or isn't finished or whatever. It doesn't matter. Right now, when you're in the process of building up your portfolio and building up your expertise and proving that you're really doing the work, right? You need those green dots, and you just need the practice of pushing and coding essentially on a day-to-day basis. And later, you can go through and you can delete some repositories. It will not delete the green dots. You can go through and clean things up, right? When you're in the process of building your portfolio and building that body of proof, right? Don't let any fears or what's the word, imposter syndrome, or don't let any of that get in the way. You just code and push your work on a day-to-day basis, right? The only thing I would say there is be very careful not to push any sensitive information such as passwords to GitHub, which is a very common mistake. For instance, database passwords or any other kind of sensitive information, we do not want to push that to GitHub because it's a public place most of the time, and there are literally thousands of bots that are crawling every single page on GitHub looking for the word password and whatever comes after it. So be careful with that. Let's talk about skills. What skills do you really need, right? And this is a big, very common question. And the simple answer is that you need to be able to confidently solve problems, find solutions, and build complex software using any number of technologies that solve real-world problems. And you should probably know how to deploy it as well. And that's a bit of a vague answer, but really what we're looking for, at CodingNomads, we teach software development, and it's kind of a transition that everybody has to go through, which is that it's not that we can teach you or anyone can teach you everything that you need to learn, right? What you need to learn is or build is the confidence in your own ability to solve problems, right? So let's say you're getting some kind of error that you've never seen before. You have no idea what it is. What do you do, right? For instance, if you're a CodingNomads, you can reach out on the forum or you can reach out on Slack if you're in the mentorship program. But if you're on the job, this doesn't change. You've got some kind of error. What do you do, right? Oftentimes, especially when you're the developer, there is nobody else to ask, right? Sure, there might be a more senior developer, but they're not neck deep in this application that you're writing, and it would take them several hours to get their mind wrapped around it. There's really no one to ask. And so one of the most important skills that you can build to really get yourself into that position is facing these challenges and overcoming them, whether it takes 10 minutes or 10 hours or 10 days, right? We as software engineers kind of have to have this dogged determination that we will figure this out, right? We will check every single link on Google that seems relevant. We'll read every single Stack Overflow. We'll try 15 different things. We'll run it and test it and debug it and print stuff and test it and debug it and check more Stack Overflow and just go and go and go and go and go until we find the solution, right? And in the beginning, this can take a very long time and it can feel like we're just shooting in the dark, right? And the better that you get and the more comfortable that you get, kind of the quicker and easier this becomes. And most importantly, the more confidence you gain in your own ability to solve complex challenges, whether you know the solution in advance or you never know the solution in advance when you're stuck at a problem. And as somebody who's done a lot of interviews and interviewing, that's essentially kind of one of the number one skills that people are looking for in an interview. How does this person step up to and tackle a challenge or a problem that they're not familiar with, right? Because some people will just shut down, or they'll just say, well, that's not my job, or they'll say, well, I tried and it didn't work, or there's nothing on Google, anything like that, huge red flag in an interview, right? What we're looking for is somebody that will systematically attack the problem and just rule out every possibility. There's that famous Thomas Jefferson quote or something like that, Thomas Edison. I thought when somebody, I don't think this is even really a quote, but it's often misquoted. When somebody asked him how he invented the light bulb, he said, well, I first found 999 ways not to do it, right? Which is a silly quote, but it's very accurate in that we very rarely end on the perfect solution right at the beginning, right? We have to try 999 things first to get to the one that works, right? So the skills, this is a broad answer, but what we're looking for is to get to that point where you could pick up a new framework or pick up a new database or even pick up a new language and just kind of confidently start tackling that challenge, reading the docs, reading the tutorials, watching some videos, doing some demo apps, wrapping your head around it and getting yourself to the point where, for instance, in an interview, if somebody says, have you ever used Postgres database? And you can say, I haven't, but I've used MongoDB a lot. I've used SQL Server. I've used MySQL quite a bit. And from what I've learned in databases, they're all relatively similar. So I'm not too worried that it wouldn't take me more than a couple days to wrap my head around Postgres. That's a perfectly acceptable answer that proves to the interviewer that you're capable, right? Because what you've just shown them is that you're not afraid of this challenge and that you're confident in your ability to quickly get up to speed in just a couple of days, which once you get kind of better at software development, most of these things, learning a whole new language can take a bit longer. Learning a massive framework can take a little bit longer. But most things that we need to learn really don't take, once we kind of have that fundamental foundational knowledge, don't take that much time to learn. So it's all about our ability to kind of have that confidence that we we got this. We can figure this out, right? Proving our work. Who would you hire? Obviously, candidate A. The next section that I like to talk about is kind of that first gig. And this is different from the first job. It's that first gig. And I just have this one line here, which it says, read this post by Thomas Hughes. He's an engineering manager at Etsy. We had the great pleasure of being able to post this from Thomas on CodingNomads blog. And I'm just going to show it here for a second. This is technically the 3 steps to landing an entry-level machine learning job, but you can replace machine learning with any other, software development kind of role. And I really, really like the way he said this, right? He broke it down into 3 sections: getting past recruiters so you can get the interview, getting past the interview so that you can get the job, and then being good at the job so that you don't want to die, right? And what I want to talk about here is just the first thing, which is getting past recruiters so that you can get a job. And this can be really tricky to get that first interview. It's like this chicken or the egg problem of, I need experience to get an interview, but I can't get experience without an interview or job, right? And it's kind of this, how do I get past this kind of roadblock? And I really, really like Thomas's advice, because he basically says, and I really encourage you to read this blog. It's how to get an entry-level machine learning job on CodingNomads blog. But he essentially says, and I'll paraphrase this, is find anyone that that might run a business or work at a business or has a small startup or is an entrepreneur, and tell them, don't ask, that you're going to build a project for them, right? And let's say, I know Jared, who's a director of operations here at CodingNomads, fantastic guy. He did this previously with a company that he used to work at that had a screen up on the wall where they had an application running that showed various prices of various assets and things like gold and silver and stuff like that. And it was really old fashioned and kind of outdated. And so for this very, in a very similar way as to what we're talking about here, he approached them and said, hey, I want to rebuild that for you guys. And I think I could do a really good job. You don't have to pay me anything. All I ask is that if people call or ask or reach out to you saying, did Jared ever work for you? I just ask that you say yes and that I did a great job, right? And so this is a really, really good way of become an engineer, whether anybody likes it or not, because you are one, right? And you don't need to ask for permission. You don't need to get hired by some big company or any company to make that happen, right? You can think about anybody that you know that you might be able to approach and say, hey, I'd like to build this project for you, right? If you have a friend that runs a small grocery store, be like, what software do you use? What do you wish that was better? What's a piece of software that could help you, right? At CodingNomads, we're constantly building custom software to better manage our mentors and students and everything that's happening. And if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'd really like to help you build that, all I ask is that you act as a reference to me for me. And we're not talking about 6-12 months of work. We're talking about 4, 6, 8 weeks of work, right? Like a nice little project that you can just build. That's not you taking a course. It's not you kind of working through, for instance, one of CodingNomads courses. It's something entirely different, all right? And then you do it, and you do a good job, and you do whatever is necessary to get that job done, right? And now you can put that on your resume as a job, right? And you didn't have to get hired. You didn't have to ask for, sure, you had to ask your friend, but essentially find somebody and just tell them that you're going to build a project for them in a semi-professional sense, and do that once, maybe do that twice, maybe do that 3 times. Each one of those becomes professional experience on your resume, which helps you get into that interview. I'll stop here on this article. That being said, I do highly recommend that you read it, and I'll work my way back over here. So get any gig, right? And this can't be overstated. It's any professional experience, and this kind of veers away from ambition and inspiration and what you really want to be doing in the long run with your career. In the beginning, it's about any experience that you can get, any experience, any gig. Right now, we oftentimes are connecting a lot of students at CodingNomads with people that approach us. Right now, there's a student that we're connecting. Somebody reached out to us and said, I have this idea for this small project I'd like to build. I don't have much of a budget. It's XYZ. Do you have anybody that might be interested in this? And one of the people that we've been working with was like, absolutely. So we're connecting them. It's not a 6-figure salary, nor should anyone expect a 6-figure salary for your first job, but it's something that's professional, where this person is getting paid a little bit of money to get more experience and to get experience on their resume, right? So read that post, get any gig, whether pay nothing, whether it's an internship, whether it's a volunteer, whether they'll pay you $100, just get some professional experience. Next, this is just kind of a slide here, but you need experience. You need as much as you can get. Don't wait for someone to offer it to you. Go get it, right? You don't need to be invited to build your own professional experience. You just have to be doggedly determined to go get it, whether anybody gives you permission or not. So how do we get our foot in the door, right? And this speaks on the same, don't wait for an invitation, please, just announce your presence. And the number one thing that you can do is knock on hundreds of doors. And there's a couple of kind of strategies here, right? But we recommend that when you're looking for a job, you should kind of split your time in three kind of primary sections. One is applying for jobs. Two is building projects, because you should not stop coding. If you have 3 or 4 months of green dots on your GitHub and then you just stopped because the course you were in ended, and now it's been 3, 6, 9, 12 months, or, all of a sudden you just got this little window of green dots on your GitHub. You've just had this little window of active development experience. That's a big red flag for anybody that's looking at your portfolio and at your resume. They want to see consistent progress on your part, right? So don't stop building projects. In a given day, if you're working on let's say you were working on getting a job full time, you spend 3 hours in the morning applying for jobs. You spend 3 hours in the middle of the day working on this portfolio project that you've been building, and you spend 3 hours of the day, it's a long day, but you spend 3 hours of the day doing interview prep. So these are things like leak code, algorithm, data structures kind of practice, kind of just getting ready for that interview, right? Continuing on this, like where to spend our time, I really would break this into the first and foremost thing that I find to be most useful is finding companies that you would actually like to work with and reaching out to them, right? And there's a lot of places where you can find them. Working your own network, working LinkedIn, letting everybody know that you're now a capable software developer and that you're looking for work, right? Let everybody know. Join events like you've joined this one, right? Join all of these events. Just put your hat in the ring, right? That you're involved and that you're becoming a professional software developer. And then work things like LinkedIn, Indeed, AngelList, and then code. Don't stop coding. One thing that I would say though, and I'll speak to this in the strategy, is LinkedIn is fantastic and you should be using it all the time, building your profile, refining your profile on there, connecting with people, reaching out to people. It's a great place to find employees of companies that you're looking to work with for and reaching out to them saying, hey, I love what your company's doing. I'd love to get involved. Could you connect me with the right person? I'd like to interview. LinkedIn is really, really valuable. That being said, in my experience, especially for entry-level developers, just hitting apply on 100 jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed is something that you should do, but I wouldn't actually recommend that you make that your job search strategy, right? Because to speak to kind of the strategy here, first jobs are almost always with small companies, right? And small companies don't really have the budget, the personnel, or the time to post a job ad for a junior developer, right? Because for instance, if a small company posts a job on a remote junior developer job on Indeed or LinkedIn, and I've done this before, you're literally going to get at minimum dozens and likely hundreds of applications, right? And as a small company, that's a really hard thing to deal with, right? That's going to take dozens of hours of your time to parse through all these applications and to respond to people and to do back and forth emails with people and to schedule interviews, etc. And even the ones that do it, when you apply to them, you're one of 78 applicants, right? Or one of 290 applicants, which is fine. Like be one of those applicants, right? You never know. There's a chance there and you shouldn't discount it, right? Or you shouldn't necessarily avoid it. But in my experience, I've seen a much better success rate in actually researching companies that you're legitimately interested in working for, figuring out what kind of technologies they use, what languages they use, essentially making your own database or Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet of companies that are legitimately interesting to you, contacts that you found for them, technologies that they use, and start reaching out to them whether they're hiring or not, right? And I cannot speak to this enough because very, very oftentimes you'll see a job ad for a senior developer or a developer with 3 to 5 years experience, right? And you can see what technologies they want that senior developer to have. And then if you go on something like AngelList, which is a fantastic place to find startups, which I fully recommend getting on there, building a profile, getting comfortable with everything on there, because there's a lot of jobs for a lot of small companies, which is a great place to get your first job. But you'll see these job listings where they want 10 years of experience and 50 different qualifications, and they'll pay $50,000 a year, which is great. But no senior developer with 10 years of experience that has all these qualifications is going to work for $50,000 a year. So what they're actually hiring for is a junior developer. And they just maybe don't know it, or they're just trying to get somebody with as much experience as possible within their budget. And the reason I bring up budget is that there's no small startup tech company in the world that doesn't need more help. I mean, I don't think there's any small technical tech startup in the world that doesn't need more developers, right? More developers means more progress, means more productivity, means faster to market, means quicker to an actual revenue stream, right? And these small companies don't have much budget, they don't have a huge HR department, and they need help, right? As I mentioned here, they want senior developers, but they can only afford junior developers. And the number one thing that you can be doing, and I don't mean once or twice or 3 times, I mean hundreds of times, is finding those companies and reaching out to them and following up and following up and following up, whether they're hiring or not. Almost every single person that we've hired at CodingNomads as mentors, et cetera, and we've put out ads and we've hired some people the traditional way, but I would say 80% of the people that work at CodingNomads were people that reached out to us and followed up, right? Because it's that follow-up that shows me or anybody who's looking at CodingNomads, this person's legitimately interested and they're going out of their way to tell us that they want to work for us. And as a small company, we need our team to be as ambitious, inspired, engaged, and capable as possible. And we don't want to hire somebody that just needs a job because they just need to get paid and they don't really care what it is, right? We want people that are excited about what we do and think they could really help and really want to help, right? And that's where that whole kind of ambition and inspiration part comes from, is that you do the research, you find 50 companies that you're legitimately interested in working for, create a Google Doc, create a spreadsheet, start finding people all over LinkedIn that you can connect with, and just essentially bang on their door until they give you a yes or a no or a leave us alone, right? And we've seen this work over and over and over again. If there's some small company that's got 15 people and they're doing something that you are really interested and really excited about, and they might not even be hiring or know that they should be hiring, right? But you just keep emailing and emailing and emailing, they're gonna be like, we should give this person a shot. They seem really excited and interested and we could use help, right? And all of a sudden they're hiring a junior developer without even knowing that they needed one, let alone posting a job ad, right? So I really can't say this enough. I always say, throw all the spaghetti on the wall, hit that Indeed apply button 100 times, go on LinkedIn, apply to all those jobs as well. But this third aspect, which is find companies that you're actually interested in working for and start reaching out to them, whether they're hiring or not, in my opinion, is the most useful and kind of potent way to get noticed, right? Because then that small company, the only person they're seeing is you, right? And they're seeing that you're really interested, really excited, really passionate, and they want to talk to you. And sure, it might not happen on the first or second or third company you reach out to, but if you reach out to 100 companies like that and you're legitimately skilled and you've got a legitimate profile and GitHub that shows all kinds of projects and that you're a capable software engineer, that's gonna transition and translate into interviews, right? So get hired, right? And this is what it's all about, right? What you need to do is demonstrate value, right? No company wants to hire somebody because they say, well, I think this would be a great opportunity for me to learn more, and I've always wanted to be a developer, and I would love to do I, right? The only I that you should be saying is, I really believe that I can help this company succeed. I can bring value. I can help this team. I can be an active member that helps us get to market quicker. What companies are looking for when they're, and I mentioned this with CodingNomads, what we're looking for is people that will help us succeed, right, as a company. So your job is to demonstrate your value. Companies and the people who work for them need help. They need strong, capable, confident coworkers to help the company succeed. And your job is to convince them that you can help them, right? So be real careful about kind of making it about you when you're reaching out to companies, about how you want this opportunity and you want to grow, right? What you want and what the message that you need to convey is that you want to help this company achieve their goals, right? And then lastly, be prepared, right? So now we're actually talking about the interview. What kind of questions can you expect? This is a really difficult thing to speak to, especially in short order. But some of the most common questions, and oftentimes one of the most important questions that you'll be asked, and this was always the most important question that I asked people I was interviewing: why do you want to work for this company? Right? Why do you want to work for this company? And oftentimes that can catch people off guard because they're all prepared for algorithms and data structures and all this kind of stuff. And honestly, the only reason they might want to work for this company is that they need a job and they want to be a software developer, but that's not an inspiring answer, right? So, and I've seen this question many, many times on both sides of the interview. You should be really prepared to answer this question first and foremost. Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work at this company? And there's a lot of different answers for that, but you should be prepared for it. The next one is tell us about your experience, right? And this is where all the courses you've taken, all the portfolio projects you've built, all of those gigs that you found that you got paid $200 for or $1,000 for or anything. This is where all of those things come in to kind of build your general experience, right? Then there's always going to be some technical questions, and some good examples here are your classic kind of leak code, algorithmic data structures, sorting algorithms kinds of questions. Luckily, in my experience as an entry-level engineer or kind of going for junior developer jobs, it's not like you need to know every single one in the universe, right? When it comes to data structures, you should know, obviously, arrays, things like hash maps or dictionaries, things like stacks and queues, things like trees, right? Linked lists, obviously, but like 5 or 6 kind of core ones, right? In Java, I would say arrays, array list, hash map, stack, queue, linked list, tree, and then if you want to be fancy, you could do the trie, TRIE. That's really just 5 data structures to wrap your mind around. And if you give each one of those data structures, let's say a whole day or 2 of your time, and you do all the tutorials and you watch a bunch of videos and you actually write the code and you debug the code and you really do everything that you can to wrap your head around it. Once you've wrapped your head around it, you've kind of got it. You can answer those questions. And then on the, and of course, there's other ones that you could be asked, but and oftentimes the real trick of the question here is that they won't necessarily just say, write us a binary search tree. They'll ask a question and try to determine whether or not you can see that this is a use case for a tree, right? Or whether this is a use case for a linked list. Because they'll ask you, let's say, let's say that we have a website, let's say it's Apple, and we're releasing our new iPhone. And every day when we release our iPhone for online sales, the website just crashes immediately because 5 million people hit the website at the same exact moment. We can't handle the load. How would you solve that, right? And there's a lot of answers, but one of the first things that I would say there is, well, this sounds like a good opportunity to use a queue, which is a data structure that's first in, first out. So as we get all these incoming requests, instead of just immediately trying to process their purchase, put them in a queue, right? That's all you do when the request comes in, put them in a queue, and then process each transaction off the queue as your system has the ability to do so, right? And so that's kind of, it can be tricky. When it comes to sorting algorithms, you should know some iterative or recursive. So your custom one, your obvious ones are going to be like your bubble sort, your insertion sort, your selection sort. Those are kind of iterative, sorting algorithms. The bubble sort is not really one you're going to be asked because they assume that one to be a bit too basic, right? But selection sort, insertion sort, and then you're going to want to know a couple recursive ones like the merge sort and the quick sort, right? And again, just 4 or 5 sorting algorithms. If you can wrap your head around those 4 or 5 data structures and 4 or 5 sorting algorithms, and the more the merrier, but you've kind of got that base knowledge, right? The next part is going to be these logic questions. And I remember one, I'll never forget it. They said, you've got 2 eggs, and this is a classic one. I've seen it on other interview question sites. You've got 2 eggs. I think they said water balloons. Some people say eggs, and a 100-story building. And we need to figure out let's use water balloons because it makes more sense. We need to figure out at what floor what's the highest floor you can drop this water balloon from without it bursting, right? And we want to find this in the most efficient way possible. And that was the question. What is the highest floor that we can drop this water balloon from? What is the algorithm that you would write? So one of the solutions is we'll start at the bottom and just start working your way up, dropping a balloon on each floor until one breaks, and then right? And that works. That a very common word that's used in this situation would be naive. They would call that a naive solution because it's not efficient, right? Because let's say that it wasn't a building, and let's say that it's the Burj Khalifa or whatever, and there's thousands and thousands of floors, and the balloon doesn't break until the very top floor. It's going to take a very long time to figure out which floor this bursts on. So there's more efficient ways to essentially break this into, for instance, you could go to the 10th floor and drop it. And if it breaks, then you know that the answer is somewhere between 1 and 9. You could start at 1 and work up until you've gotten there, right? Or let's say that it breaks on the 44th floor, right? So you'd go to the 10th floor, it doesn't break. You go to the the 20th floor, it doesn't break. You go to the 30th floor, it doesn't break. 40th doesn't break. 50th, it breaks. So in 5 cases, we've gotten up to, we know it breaks somewhere between 40 and 50, right? And then you can just start at 41 doesn't break, 42 doesn't break, 43 doesn't break, 44 it breaks. Figured it out in 8 or 9 steps that it breaks on the, 44th floor, right? Which is obviously more efficient than going 44 drops to get there, right? So these are these kind of logic questions. And the number one thing that I can say here is that there oftentimes isn't necessarily a right answer. What they're wanting to see is that you're just kind of endlessly attacking the problem, trying different solutions, asking questions to understand the problem better. Because if you don't understand the problem, there's no way you're going to get to the right solution. So if there's any confusion about what they're really asking, ask questions, get clarity, right? That's also a really good sign and a green light that this is somebody that you want to work with, right? Because you've just asked them this very complex question. And if somebody just goes into trying to solve it and gets it wrong and says, well, I can't figure it out, that person is not going to be as productive as a coworker as somebody that says, you know what, I don't actually fully understand the problem. Can you elaborate it a little more? Am I understanding this correctly? Okay, so I've got 2 balloons. Okay. And like really wrapping their head around the question and then starting to solve it. That's something that's a green light in an interview. Whether they get the right answer or not, you know that with that strategy, they're gonna get it sooner or later, right? And a classic example here is I don't know that they ask this anymore and they got a lot of flack for it, but it used to be a very common interview question at Google, which was how many ping pong balls can you fit in a 747, right? And it's a very simple question, and there is really no right answer. And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about this now, but I still like the premise. The answer that they were looking for was, what questions will you ask? Are there people in the plane? Are we also putting ping pong balls in the luggage compartment? Is there luggage in there? Do we need to fill the luggage with ping pong balls? Are there seats? Or should we imagine that we're putting ping pong balls in the fridge, in the galley, in the bathroom, in the cockpit, right? Because it's only when somebody truly understands the state of that 747 and that, no, it is indeed completely empty, no seats, you need to fill the whole luggage compartment as well as the body. Again, there's no seats, all this kind of stuff. Then you can actually start getting towards what might be a solution. But without asking those questions, there's no way you're ever going to get there, right? And then lastly is, do you have any questions for us? And this can be a tricky one because if you should come prepared to any interview being ready to ask them. And a very good question in my experience to ask is, what's the turnover like here? How often are people, how long have most of your engineers or teammates been on the team, right? Because you can get a very quick answer. You can kind of, well, I used to ask this a lot because a lot of companies have a huge turnover, and that's not a good sign, right? That means that it's not really a great place to work. Maybe the management's bad, this, that, or the other thing. What we're looking for, because we get to be picky too as developers where we want to work, is a team that's been there for a long time, that has a really good work culture, that's really going to support you as a developer in your journey, right? And if you can bring critical questions to the interview for the interviewer, right, that is also another green light, good sign that this person's a critical thinker that is taking this seriously, right? So I've gone much longer than I hoped to because I wanted to open it up for questions. But step one, we need to get skilled. This is a 6, 9, 12-month journey of dedicated study. Guidance is good and better. You'll get there quicker. Step two, get any gig, whether it pays $100 or $10 or $1,000, get any gig and do that over and over again at building that professional experience so that you can get your foot in the door and actually get interviews. To get our foot in the door, we need to have a strategy of knowing what we want and going for it, right? Get out there. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for an invitation. Put yourself out there over and over and over again. Make that list of, hundreds of companies that you're interested in and all the contacts there that you could reach out to and follow up with them over and over and over again. And then in getting hired, right, it's about demonstrating your value that you can bring to the company. So I'll stop there. I know that I've seen in the chat, there's a lot of questions. And I'll open it up for a little Q&A. And I know we're originally scheduled to go for just 10 more minutes, but I can stick around for a while. So we can, if people need to drop off, feel free to do so, but I'll stick around so that we can chat. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome. So I'm catching up here in the chat. Maybe should I start from the top, or Kim or Jared, looks like you've been moderating it a bit.
Yeah, we've been kind of answering questions as they go, but just now Juan asked a question, and Theo as well at the very end.
So Juan says, I'm a self-taught Python developer and trying to get my first job. I always nail the HR filter, but in the technical interview, I've struggled. Tips when the questions get complicated and one doesn't know or doesn't remember the answer by heart. So this is a very common, very, very common situation. I've been in it as the interviewer, and I've also been as the interviewee, and I've been on that side as the interviewer. Even if you're not getting to the answer correctly, or you don't just have the answer memorized, because again, in software development and in these roles, it's not about just having everything memorized. It's about demonstrating that you have the ability to get to the solution sooner or later, right? And you can, I would say, ask questions. So when the questions get complicated and one doesn't know or doesn't remember the answer, you could just kind of start. And one of the ways to do it might be, I'm not really sure what to do here. I mean, there's the most simple way that I could think to do it would probably be the iterative way. I could loop through everything, and kind of start working that out and being like, is this kind of the solution that you're looking for? And they'd be like, that's right, but we're actually looking for and they'll give you hints. Interviewers want you to do well, right? And so let them help you. Ask questions and show that, the worst thing, and I've seen this in interviews before, is somebody just saying like, well, no, I think this is right, or and we know it's wrong, or well, I just don't know. I don't know, right? And if you just don't know, you can ask a bunch of questions to try to help. And again, asking questions is a good sign in an interview. It doesn't make you look amateur or unprepared. It makes you look capable and intelligent, right? So keep asking more and more questions until you can feel like you can understand the question a bit better. And then, another one that I've done before in the past is kind of ask if they'll take another kind of answer, which is, for instance, let's say that they're asking you to do a bucket sort of some kind, and or a radix sort, or one of these interesting sorts that you've maybe heard of but have no idea how it works, right? One of the things that I would do in that interview is I would say, you know what, I don't actually know the radix sort. I've heard about it. I've seen 1 or 2 tutorials on Geeks for Geeks, but so I can't really answer that one, but I can show you a merge sort, or I can show you a quick sort. Would that work? And a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, that'll work. Because what they want to see is that you know how to do complex things, when in this case, data structures and algorithms. So, and I've been the interviewer on the other side where somebody does something like that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, show me that, right? Because what I want to see is that they've got that kind of base knowledge, right? Because with that base knowledge and some ambition and some dedication, we can teach them anything else they need to know. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I see Nikita adds, one thing I would like to add about LinkedIn, they have LinkedIn skill assessments, which is a great thing. Thank you, Nikita, for bringing that up. And which I completely agree with. Getting these assessments to kind of just show a check mark that you've got these skills is obviously valuable, right? Because they don't have to take your word for it. They can see that you've done the work. These things are really useful. So Theo asks, how does this approach apply to someone in their 40s looking to switch? That's a good question, and one I get a lot, and one I'm gonna have to. I turn 40 in a couple of weeks, so I'm gonna be answering for myself here probably someday soon, but not soon, I should say. Someday, hopefully not. I think in my experience is try to leverage your existing skill set, right? Whatever that might be, and let's say that you and Theo, I have no idea what your background is, but let's just say that you've been working, as I previously worked, as a bartender, right? Or in the restaurant industry for a long time. I've got a ton of domain knowledge in the restaurant industry. Maybe I should go look for companies that are building software for restaurants and for bars, right? Because I can bring a whole lot of domain knowledge that increases my my value to this company, rather than some completely switching into an entirely new field. If there's a way for you to leverage your existing skill set and your previous experience, I would definitely do that. Also, you know, someone in their if you're in your 40s and looking to switch into software development, one thing is you might want to try to, think about you probably work well as a manager, right? In that, whether it be engineering management or product management or project management with the engineering team, right? Is that a lot of these companies, a lot of the developers, it's just the way of the world, are going to be these kind of young upstarts in their 20s, and that what a lot of these companies need is somebody who's capable in software development that can kind of manage all these kids, right? And there's people of all ages. I've worked in a lot of different engineering departments, and one thing I can say without a doubt is that there's always people of all ages, right? But if you're not sure, you're feeling like, I don't know if I want to go onto the engineering floor with all of these kids right out of college or whatever age they are, you can kind of augment that and say, well, maybe I could get into kind of an engineering management role, right? Because engineering managers, it's they need to be good developers, but they're not the ones that are necessarily writing all the code, right? They need to understand the project in and out, but they're what they also do is manage the team and manage the project and manage the goals and manage the sprints and manage everything else. So not to say that that's what you have to do, but it might be something for you to consider, Theo. Julian asks, what are some foundational tech stuff software to focus on in the first 3 to 6 months? This is a fantastic question, Julian. I, without a doubt and without any hesitation, would say pick one language and get really good at it, right? Whatever that language is, Rust, Java, Python, JavaScript, PHP, C, C++, C Sharp, pick it. There's a lot of different languages to pick from. I would also recommend picking one that's very widely used and very, very popular. So, kind of your top 5 languages, or your top 3, in my opinion, would be Python, Java, and JavaScript. Pick one of those and get really good at it and completely forget about everything else, right? One of the biggest mistakes that people can make in the beginning is feeling like they need to kind of learn everything all at once, right? Which is a really good way to get nowhere fast, right? I would much rather hire somebody that's really good at this one thing than somebody that's not kind of okay at many things, right? And so my number one advice to anybody would be pick a language and stick on it until you can confidently tell yourself, like, I think I know Python now, right? And I can see Scott is on this call right now. Scott is hi Scott. Scott's a very really good example of this. We've had the pleasure of working with Scott at CodingNomads, and he just put his head down with Python and got really good at it, right? And now we've got him working in Kotlin and JavaScript and all these other things. But it's because he was able to get really good at one that he's now kind of able to just pick up others, right? Because they all are kind of similar. My old computer science professor back in university, he was like a classic guy with the glasses with the tape in the middle kind of thing, and like snorting and fixing his glasses all the time. I've got very great memories of him. And he would always make this joke, JMOP, it's just a matter of programming. It's just a matter of programming. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Java or JavaScript or Python. They all have for loops. They've all got while loops. They've all got the idea, and it does kind of change, but they've all got the idea of methods and functions and classes and most of the time objects and all of these other things. And so once you're really good at one, all of a sudden learning these other ones becomes much, much easier. So Julian, without a doubt, in the first 3 to 6 months, I would focus on getting really good at one language. Then, and you should be, it's not a should, but oftentimes they'll take people a good few months, right? We find that with dedicated study, it takes about 3 months or so to get really quite confident with the fundamental core language of, let's say, Java or Python. There's always more to learn, right? But in understanding, like, mostly you kind of just know the core Java or Python programming language. The next step is to find a very commonly used framework on that language and get good at that, right? So for Java, that's the Spring framework. It's by far the most widely used framework for enterprise Java development. For Python, that could be Flask or Django if you're going into web development, or all your common tools for data science and machine learning, getting comfortable with Matplotlib and NumPy and Jupyter Notebooks, and there's a whole bunch of kind of more discrete libraries in the data science and machine learning world. Maybe Shadas can speak to that a little bit, but get really good at a language. And then once you've got that, get really good at least one framework that sits on top of that. Because the way that frameworks work is, and this is a silly analogy I use all the time as well, but learning to code is kind of like learning to play music, right? And for the first couple of months, let's say I'm not a very good musician, but if let's say I'm trying to learn the guitar, for the first couple of months, it's just going to be me in my house, learning some notes, learning some chords, learning a couple of basic songs. And after 3 or so months of that in a very dedicated, where I spend 15 to 20 hours a week doing that for 3 months, after 3 months, I'm going to be pretty good. I'm going to know some songs. I'm going to be able to play for my friends and family at home, right? But I'm not ready to play on a stage at a concert in front of 500 people, right? And that second part, the playing on stage with a band in front of a big crowd, that's kind of like the framework part of. So the first 3 months is like learning the core language, learning Java or Python is kind of like learning that core stuff at home by yourself for the first couple of months. And then that next few months, kind of like the 3 to 6 month is like learning how to play with a band and learning how to perform to the public, right? Because for instance, with Spring, we can take our fundamental Java programming knowledge and all of a sudden start building kind of real world production grade web services and web applications and REST APIs and integrating with all the world services. And it's at that point that you're now kind of ready to perform on stage. So hopefully that helps. Nick asks, hey, Nick, what are some questions I would need to address as someone who is a career changer? So the main thing here is skill, right? I think a lot of people get into software development. We've had the great pleasure at CodingNomads of helping many, many people over the last several years change careers, right? And it's the most rewarding aspect of my job, right? Is when we've been working with somebody for 6, 9, 12 months and all of a sudden they get a job and we get to just congratulate them and they go on their way, right? And it's just this like really rewarding moment. And many of them, I would say the majority of them, have been career changers. And the number one thing, kind of the number one attribute or characteristic of those successful career changers is kind of this dogged determination to get it done, right? It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter how many times they get it wrong. It doesn't matter how many companies they have to apply to. It doesn't matter, right? They're doing this whether I like it or not, whether they like it or not, whether their family and friends like it or not. They're doing this. And it's this kind of attitude, it's this mindset of determination and persistence to get up to skill. And then once you're up to skill, and being up to skill just means, like I said in the presentation, you have the ability to build complex, dynamic, modern software using any number of tools, right? And right now, in the beginning, that feels like totally overwhelming. But once you're 3 to 6 months, let's say 6 months into it, that doesn't feel as overwhelming anymore, because you're kind of like, okay, well, like Scott, I hope you don't mind if I mention you again, right? But Scott's been studying with CodingNomads for 6, 7 months, and we put into work on a project that is nothing at all related to what he studied, because he's at that level, and we believe he's at that level where he can now just start picking up other things, right? And because he put in the time to get up to that level, to get skilled enough, that it doesn't really matter what language it is. It doesn't really matter what framework it is. It's just a matter of programming. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of persistence and determination, right? So I would say, like, that to me, rather than any particular questions to be prepared for, it's more like that would be my primary recommendation for a career changer, is that mindset of it's not if, it's when. And I'm in control here. I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm not going to wait for an invitation. I'm going to get this done, whether anybody likes it or not. You know what I mean? So hopefully that helps. Kat asked, should I get the fundamentals of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript first, even if I want to focus on Python? No. We actually at CodingNomads do it the other way around. We focus on Python and core programming and software development first. And then if somebody's going kind of into the web development route, then we kind of backfill the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The good news, the reason I think that this is good is that I think HTML, CSS, and JavaScript can have a way of just feeling really confusing, and it's different on different browsers, and there's always a new shiny object, and there's all these different things that need to learn. And there's 70 different ways to do it. And in my opinion, it's a bit kind of fuzzy and messy. And if you approach that topic after already being a capable, confident software developer with something like Python, all of a sudden learning HTML and CSS seems simple. JavaScript is always going to be a little bit like, what? But the, HTML and CSS, the good news about it is that they're very, very Googleable, right? Like if you need to get two columns to show side by side instead of one on top of the other, that is a Google CSS column side by side, right? And then there's 40,000 examples on W3 schools and everywhere else with little editors showing you the CSS that you need with the Flexbox, for instance, to do columns side by side rather than on top of each other, or divs side by side rather than on top of each other. So I would actually fully recommend that you get good at Python and core software development and kind of algorithmic logical thinking through learning something like Python. And then you can essentially backfill things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, especially as if you want to focus on Python, focus on Python. Again, and again, this kind of speaks to that, find one thing, one language, and go for it, right? Go all in on that language for a while until you can really confidently say, like, I can do that, right? Or for instance, I don't mean to plug CodingNomads courses too much here, but like CodingNomads has a number of great courses, and several of them are just a few dollars a month to join, and we're actually thinking of making a lot of that content. We're very much thinking about taking away the paywall on a lot of the kind of fundamental courses, and go through one of our courses, pay $9 as it is right now for our Python course, and download all the labs and just go through them. And if you get to the point with Python where every single one of those labs and challenges feels relatively easy or totally doable for you, then you know that you kind of know Python, right? Or find, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I would say focus on Python first, get really good at programming and algorithmic thinking, and then move on to the next topics. Diction 10 asks, is it possible for people living outside of the US, especially in Africa, to get a remote entry-level software developer job? I'm a Python Django developer. I would say yes. I've worked with, before starting CodingNomads, one of the things I loved the most about software development were the teams that I got to work on and the international nature of those teams. And it was part of the inspiration for CodingNomads, which is that to kind of build a community of learners and educators and mentors that could help anybody anywhere learn skills to engage in this global job market. So without a doubt, I would say, yes, I do believe it's possible for people outside of the US to get a remote entry-level software developer job. It can be, when you're trying to get a remote job with a company based in a foreign country. So I'm not sure if you're asking to get a job for a US company. It can be more difficult to get a job for a foreign company. That being said, this goes back to that, find the company that you're really, really interested in. Like for instance, Diction 10, find a company that actually inspires you, or dozens of them, right? That you're actually really interested to work for, and just start letting them know you exist, and don't just email once. And I say this to everyone, please don't just email once, email again and again and again and again, and reply to your own previous email so that they can see the thread every time, right? When they click on your email, might be the fourth one, they can see all 4 emails you've written previously. You want these companies to know that you exist. And when you're first getting started, or one of the things I would say is to, don't go for Google, and that's like a classic example, right? But find those smaller companies that need help and might not even be hiring or actively have a job ad out, but find them. All of these smaller startup style companies need help, and if you keep putting yourself in front of them and you're able to demonstrate that you're a very good Python Django developer, it doesn't matter where you live, right? I've had, in one of my former jobs, we had people in Asia, the North America, and Europe, and it was like this 24-hour development team. I would get to work, and we would literally hand off. I would have like a 30-minute meeting with a guy in Germany, and we would hand off, like, I would essentially pick up what he had been working on, and then at the end of my day, we would transfer it over. So the software development world is a very international world with people from all over the place working on all these companies, especially now, so even more after COVID and all this kind of stuff. So I would say absolutely, just keep putting yourself out there. And is the first or second company going to say yes? Probably not, right? And I'd say this to anyone applying for any job, right? But if you keep at it with that persistence and just, over and over and over again, following up until they say yes, no, or leave us alone, right? That's my kind of advice there. So Amani says, with someone having no work experience in the development field, what advice could you give for building the freelance experience you talked about? How to know which project to start with, or how to make it work when you haven't done a complete project before? So Amani, this is a fantastic question, and I think one that a lot of people are kind of struggling with, right? Is like, well, what project should I do? I would say it does depend a bit on kind of where you're at in the learning journey and what skills you've learned so far, right? So for instance, we with Diction 10, was just talking about how or he or she or they are familiar with Python and Django. And for instance, if in that case, I would say that means they know how to build web applications with Python. So then it's kind of finding any friend that has a small business, whether it's a local store that sells, you know, children's toys, or whatever it might be, right? Anybody that that kind of runs their own business, or somebody that runs a child daycare, or you know, really anybody, and like in this particular case, and say, could you use a new web application? Could you use an application to help you manage all the kids in your daycare? Could you use a new application to help you manage your inventory? Could you use this? Could you just start asking your friends or anybody that will listen to you that you think is relevant, what kind of stuff they would actually need to be that would actually interest them, that would allow them to run their business better, right? And so that basically, I'm not sure what else to say there other than ask anybody that will listen to you what they need, right? And then oftentimes, this happens a lot at CodingNomads, where we get a lot of people reaching out to us saying that they need WordPress developers or whatever. We're like, well, we don't personally teach WordPress development, right? And so we're the wrong people to ask about that. But if somebody, you know, so you're going to reach out to people and they're going to say, oh, well, I need my WordPress. That's the reason I brought this up. I need my WordPress site updated. If that's interesting to you and you just want more experience working in software development as a whole, which that is, take it. But if you talk to 10 different people, asking them what they need and what would benefit them, you're going to get some answers, and maybe one or two of them are something that you're like, I think I could do that, or I'd like to try that. I think I could learn how to do that, right? So hopefully that helps. Thank you, Juan and Hamza. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Right, can I jump in with a suggestion?
Please do.
I'm going to leave my video off because my bandwidth is a little low. But another thing that we've seen students do is when they have a company that they're really interested in working for, they'll build like a little prototype of that company's product, or they're just, it'll be really simple, but it just shows that you're really interested in the company, you're proactive, you are familiar with their tech stack. Maybe you have to learn a new framework or a new technology to build that. You can put that as a part of your application, but that's just another example of a project that you could build while also proving yourself as like a really worthy and interesting and interested candidate.
That's a great point, Kim, and it makes me think of a friend of ours who got a job at this very, very cool astronomy for this. There's an organization building a network of very massive telescopes all over the world that can keep an eye on one part of the sky 24 hours a day, which is an inherent problem in astronomy because you can only look in the middle of the night at one part of the sky, and then the Earth spins, and that telescope can no longer look in that direction. And so that we can track comets and asteroids and all these other deep space objects, etc. There's a big organization that's building essentially a network of telescopes that are all connected, that can essentially keep an eye in the sky in any one spot 24 hours a day. And a buddy of ours got a job there because in his free time, to help him learn Python and Django, he built a website, which I can actually show here, astrochallenge.com. And it's a very relatively simple but complex social network for amateur astronomers. And I'll just show you guys here real quick. He built this for fun as a project to help him learn Python and Django, which he didn't know previously. So he went through a bunch of challenges. He found like a build a social network with Django kind of tutorial. He went through it and he built this thing where you can log it, you can create an account, you can log in, and you can start tracking your observations, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really cool. And you can connect with other people. And then when he applied for that job, for that, astronomy center, he got it, right? Well, they're like, obviously you're the kind of guy we want to hire for this, or the kind of person we want to hire for this. So yeah, I'll push on a little bit. I know I'm kind of going to stay on for a little while longer. I know people are going to have to hop off. I'm going to keep working my way down this. So feel free to keep the questions coming. Feel free to raise your hand, Kyle, but and feel free to jump off when you need to. I'm going to, with all of you all here asking questions, I'm not going to go anywhere. So Kyle says, one of my biggest fears is the CS degree engineer versus self-taught. I'm very nervous that not having a formal degree will be a large roadblock. Is it really true that a lot of companies will hire self-taught developers? I can say without a doubt, yes. I've seen this with my own personal experience. It's not about, a lot of companies require a degree. That's just the way it is, right? Those aren't the companies that we're going to be reaching out to. And a lot of companies say they require a degree and they just don't, right? A lot of those job ads is kind of just filtering people out, right? Because they only want really capable, talented candidates. And there are going to be places that just say, nope, we want a CS degree. The good news about software development is that it's a skill that oftentimes self-taught developers are even better than CS degree type developers. So don't let that hold you back. I know it's a real fear. I know that it's normal. I hear it all the time. I have seen over and over and over again in my professional career, self-taught or non-degree holding engineers get jobs and stay in the field. So sure, is there going to be 30% of companies out there that just say we require a bachelor or master's degree? Yeah, those are out there. Those aren't the ones that we're going to talk to, right? Because there's a lot of companies, especially smaller ones, for that first job. If you can show that you can help them and you can add value and you can help them get to market or build that revenue, of a common situation is a startup might have 15 people on board. They raised $1 million last year. They've got $300,000 in the bank. Their monthly burn is $25,000. That, or let's say $50,000. That means that they will continue to exist as a company and the current rate for 6 more months, right? But they need to get this product to market so that they can open up this other revenue stream, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They need help. They're behind schedule. What are they going to do? They need to raise more money. They need to raise they need to figure something out. But what they really need is help. They don't have the budget to hire some senior engineer. And if you keep putting yourself in front of them saying, I can help you, I can help you, I can help you, I can help you, to enough people, to enough companies, one of them is going to be like, great, we need help, right? And they're going to bring you in. And then it's not, what they want to see is that you've got the skill and the ability, not the piece of paper, in my opinion. So, and as Kat says, it is, a CS degree is oftentimes a requirement, but oftentimes that's also one thing about job ads is that they'll say 3 to 5 years experience and they'll say that you need these 10 or 15 qualifications. That's these job ads from the employer's perspective are kind of like a wish list, right? We would love to have a candidate that has all of these qualifications, but if you can find a good candidate that meets 50% of them, oftentimes that person's still going to get hired, because if you are 100% qualified for a job that you're applying for, you're overqualified for that job, right? You should always be applying to a job that you're not fully qualified for, because you want to be pushing yourself to higher bounds. And it's kind of a psychological trick on the company side, which is they got hired for this job that they feel very underqualified for. So they're going to be busting their buns to learn and push and excel because this person feels like they got lucky in getting this job that they're underqualified for. So it also kind of encourages the person to push themselves harder. There's a good, thank you for your guys' comments, Shadas and Scott, and Jared, thank you. Lots of chatting going on here, great. So Daglo, studied electrical engineering, but has skills in Java and web development. I want to work during my free time. How can I get a part-time remote job? So this goes right back, I'm going to be a broken record here, but this goes right back to just putting yourself out there, right? what you're going to want is a couple of really good examples of your work on GitHub, ideally deployed, right? If you can send somebody a link to one of your functional web applications online rather than a code base that they have to inspect, or both, ideally both. But if you have a couple of great web applications that you can that demonstrate your ability, and you just start reaching out to lots of people, or you put yourself up on just mention it on LinkedIn over and over again. And I know that it can be Upwork can be a bit overwhelming because there's so many people on there, right? But essentially finding these networks and these communities of people. Oftentimes I look for there's like local startup networks, right? Lots of towns will have them, lots of states or countries will have them. It's like a directory of startups in Greece or a directory of startups in name your country, right? And just get an email for each and every one of them and just reach out and say, hey, do you guys need any web development work? A lot of times there's going to be smaller companies that can't afford to hire a full-time developer. The only thing that they can afford is a part-time developer. So you reaching out to them is perfect, because they're like, great, it's hard to put an ad out for a part-time developer. Most people are looking for full-time roles, etc. So I would stick to that same thing of finding companies you actually want to work for, that you'd be interested in working for, even slightly, right? And start reaching out to them. You want to reach out to dozens and dozens of companies and follow up over and over again until you get a yes, no, or a leave us alone, right? Lots of great conversation going on in here. So Juan mentions a question. If you have a cube that's 10 by 10 by 10 and all the exterior cube surfaces are painted, how many cubes in total are not painted at all? That sounds like an interview question, like a logic style question that you get in an interview, right? Where you have to sit down and be like, okay, I do not know the answer to this off the top of my head. How can I start solving this? Maybe I would draw it, right? And then I would, with the people interviewing me, I'd be like, am I understanding this correct? Like, is this a proper graphical representation of this cube? And they'd be like, no, it's actually 10 sections by 10 sections. You'd be like, oh, okay. So, and like start breaking it down. But this is a fantastic logic style question that you can oftentimes see in interviews, and you can't be prepared for all of them. The only thing that you can be prepared for is just reminding yourself it's about how I approach the problem, right? They want to see that sooner or later, especially with Google at my fingertips or at their fingertips, they're going to get this answer because they know how to actually approach the problem, right? Like the wrong thing to potentially say would be like, well, it's 1,000. And they'll be like, well, how'd you get to that answer? Well, like, well, it's 10 times 10 times 10. And they'll be like, well, might it be anything else? And no, I think it's 1,000, right? Like, boom, that's a really big red flag, right? This is not somebody that's gonna, not only are they not gonna get to the right answer, but they're probably gonna fight you on the way to the right answer, like that you're trying to get to, constantly trying to prove to you that they're right, which is not a productive experience, right? You're very welcome, Kat. I'm glad you've been able to join us, and thank you, Nikita, for not to start a holy war, but to me, typed languages would be easier to learn due to a rigid type structure and more explicit syntax. I agree. Also, the compiler will help you to get the silly errors fast. I agree. I think Java is a fantastic first language to learn. It's very, very widely used. It's called a typed language, meaning that you have to declare the types of your variables, for instance, rather than the interpreter inferring the type. And the compiler catches those errors because, for instance, if you have a syntax error, when you try to compile your application before you're able to run it, it'll just tell you you've got a syntax error on line 18 in this file. Whereas a lot of other, a lot of other languages might not. They won't catch that before runtime. Kat says you could offer to just volunteer for a company, right? Yes. I 100% reach out. The thing is, you want to you don't want to devalue yourself too much. If there's a chance that they'll pay you, go for that chance, right? But if you need to get that first experience and you're willing to do whatever it takes, and you have the ability to volunteer your time for a month or 2 or 3, I wouldn't go beyond 3 months, right? And like when I got my first job, software development job, it was a 90-day probationary period where they paid me essentially minimum wage. I was in San Francisco, California. It was very, very difficult for me to afford anything, but I just had to survive those 3 months, and I had to prove to them that I was going to be a productive member of the team. And I kind of essentially offered that probationary period, right? I was like, what if we did 3 months? You can pay me minimum wage. I'll get up to speed. I'll prove my value to you. And they took it, right? Because it's a low risk option for them. Be like, okay, well, they're not going to cost us that much money. We really do need help. And after 2 or 3 months, they are going to be up to speed on everything we're doing here. And so it's a very low risk option. So whether it's a probationary period for lower pay is what I'd offer first. And if you really want to work for them and they say no to that, then I would offer the volunteer option. Be like, you know what, I'll volunteer for 2 months and show you how, and it's going to be hard for any company to say no to that, and yeah, and as Nikita says, volunteer would probably work better with nonprofit orgs and kind of what's the word I'm looking for? NGOs, non-governmental organizations. You're very welcome to everybody who said thank you. And Sei says, I'm a software automation tester and want to transition into development. Is this feasible? And if, what is the best way to approach this, considering I'm already working? So absolutely, this is a transition that you can make. We see a lot of people make this transition. One thing I do recommend for when people that are starting this development journey, getting into software development, is careful what you get good at, right? Because whatever you get good at, people will start to pay you for, and then it can get hard to not do that, right? So for instance, if you start doing, let's say QA, quality assurance, and you get really good at that, it can get really easy to get stuck in there, even though what you really want to be doing is software development, right? And that being said, going through QA or whatever job you can do that gets you into a technical role at a company is one worth seriously considering. But if you've got what I would call like corollary or tangential experience, like an automation tester, and you want to get into software development, absolutely, that's a transition that you can make, right? Again, you got to get up to skill, right? No company wants to take 2, 3, 5, 6 months to train you how to code, right? You've got to bring the coding, at least the fundamental knowledge, to the table, right? And then again, just get out there, even if you're working full time, right? Find an hour at the end of every day to be applying to companies, or to be studying code, or to be building portfolio projects. Because if you've got professional automation testing experience, and you've got this great portfolio, and you're clearly a skilled developer, and you reach out to dozens of companies, again, one of these will turn into an interview. And this goes back to that dogged determination and persistence, is that it's a mindset, right? And there's not only one way to do it, but a very common characteristic of the people that we see successfully switch jobs into software development, that a lot of them share this mindset, this determination. Doesn't matter how long it takes, doesn't matter what I need to do within reason, right? We're just talking about learning development here, but it doesn't matter how long it takes or what I have to do, I'm doing this, right? And then just follow those steps. And I can tell everybody that if you're a legitimately capable developer with a legitimately impressive body of work and some portfolio projects, and you legitimately put yourself out in front of 50 companies, you're gonna get some responses. And I wouldn't say on Indeed.com by just hitting apply 50 times. I don't know that you will necessarily always get. That's a luck if what happens there. But if you reach out to companies that you're legitimately interested in working for, which does take a little more legwork. You've got to do some research. You've got to find these companies. You've got to find the people that you can reach out to. But if you do that for 50 of these companies, and you're legitimately skilled, you've got a portfolio, and you're doing that, like, it's going to turn into interviews, right? And then it just becomes getting better and better at the interview. Jared, did I see you put your hand up, or was that just a scratch? Okay, just scratching the eye.
The other thing, real quick,
Yeah.
for Sei, if you're already working as a software automation tester, perhaps the company that you're already working for needs more people on their development team. I don't know if this is the case, but we've definitely seen a lot of people just get their foot in the door as a tester or a QA engineer, and then they work up. Sometimes companies will even pay for your training if they need engineers. So they already like you, they've already hired you once, they already trust you, they know you. Promoting from within is one of the smartest things that a company can do. And so if it's a possibility, I would talk to your company first and let them know that this is something that you're excited about and passionate about, and if they would be willing to work with you in this transition. That would be, your first bet.
Absolutely. Most companies want to hire from within, without a doubt.
Can I also add?
Please.
Sorry. So one, like a little bit of advice here would be that if you are a QA engineer and you do the automation, and if like the nature of your job is to find errors and bugs, and typically what happens in a typical organization is like you file the ticket and you just move on. You move on to the next one. And developers, to be fair, like to be honest, hate these tickets. Mostly because typically they lack exact place or condition how to reproduce an error or find. So they have to spend like an extra mile of trying to understand what's going on and how to reproduce and how to rectify before they need to go to the fixing the problem. So if you can go this extra mile and add more description, and if you can even go and inspect the code and kind of find the place and actually suggest a specific solution, that's your ticket to be right away brought into the team of developers, and they will like easily get you in right away.
Fantastic feedback, Nikita. I totally agree. And Nikita brings 20 plus years of development experience, so he knows what he's talking about. So thank you, Nikita. Okay, so I'm just going down the chat here. If anybody has any specific questions or things that they'd like to mention, are there, for instance, oh, you're welcome, Say. Kim, I know that you've spent a lot of time working with people through the kind of career services and career support and the transition. Are there some things that you've thought of that I've missed that you'd like to mention?
Well, there are a couple more questions. I actually reposted one from Zachariah. Well, there's Say's that you just answered, and then there's Kyle DeVos. That was just a shout out. Thanks, Kyle. But then there's another one from Zachariah that I just posted. So Ryan, maybe you just want to keep going through. And I see
Sure.
Zachariah has his hand up now.
Nice. So Zachariah, I will.
And then I can jump in.
So Zachariah's question is, I already use GitHub as a sysadmin, even have some automated commits at Keeper repos. Should I use different profile to show my programming activity? I kind of worry that this would look like inflating my activity along with single line changes and renaming variables. I would not do a different profile, right? It's your body of work, right? And it doesn't, just because you have some automated commits, updating one line or whatever, I would think if I was a hiring manager and I see that you've got a wide body of skills and you've got automated systems running that are doing automated updates and commits to even a single line, it's pretty rare that somebody's going to go in and like read your commit history, right? Sometimes it's very obvious, like if it's a wall of green and it's all the same exact color, like literally the same exact color, I mean, like this looks automated, right? There might be some red flags that make me go look deeper into someone's GitHub profile to see what their commits actually look like. Are they literally just committing a variable change name every day so that they can get their green dot? That's not really a great look. But if I can see, and or if you could tell that this is an automated thing because of some system or service that you've got running, I wouldn't worry about using a different profile. Just keep building, add everything to your current profile is what I would say. And Kim mentioned that you had your hand up. Would you like to unmute and connect and elaborate there potentially? No worries. So Juan answered the question, 8 by 8 by 8. I just rushed and got it completely wrong. It is a permutation problem. So tip to land interviews, build a portfolio website, preferably on your own, like Flask or Django, link your GitHub page to your website, upload their solutions to the little problems, even like, so yeah, upload their solution to the little problems, even logic games like Tricky, Blackjack, Poker, etc. The other day, the owner of a startup invited to an interview and told me he went through my GitHub, but my GitHub was not in my CV. So he went to my website and saw the GitHub link, show your skills in any way possible. I completely agree with everything that Juan is saying here. It's all about demonstrating your value, right? And showing anybody who's looking that you're capable. Make sure that you're, I completely agree about building a portfolio website. I think for some people that's a little more important than others, right? If you're trying to get into web development, having a nice website portfolio is very relevant. If you're trying to get into data science, having a portfolio site is a little less useful, but it's still always a nice thing. And there's simple ways. There's a lot of services now. What is one is like about.me, right? I think is one where you can use these third-party services where you can essentially have this website that has your picture, all your links, a link to your GitHub, a link to all these other things. So you can kind of create, there's a lot of different portfolio site style services that you can use if you're not a web developer, but you still want a portfolio site. If you are a web developer, it'd be a great idea to build your own, right? Cat B asked, do you have a good GitHub crash course recommendation? Thank you so much in advance. Well, funny you should ask, because CodingNomads actually has a fantastic GitHub crash course on our learning platform. It's totally free. I can show it, I can demonstrate it here to you real quick. I'll just pull it up. It kind of goes through all your primary core functionalities required for getting comfortable with Git and GitHub. And I'll just give you a little peek here. So we're on CodingNomads online learning platform now, and under my courses, Git and GitHub, this course is completely free and open to the public. You do need an account on our platform at the moment to reach this, but once you create an account, you can come to this course, and we've got a fantastic crash course that you can see here. Documentation, videos, quizzes, exercises. It should be exactly what you need. So Zachariah says, to clarify, when I say variable name change, there'd be some purpose, such as making purpose more clear in debugging. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about trying to maintain two profiles. I really wouldn't. I think put all your work into one profile and make it as strong as possible. Cam had already mentioned the Git and GitHub course. You're very welcome, Diction 10. It was a real pleasure to have you here. Wish with love from Nigeria, and Rashid. Thank you for joining from Nigeria. I think that brings us to the bottom of the chat. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Cat B, yeah, to sign up. So go to platform.codingnomads. Oh, for a recurring meeting. Yes, what we can do here is we actually should have a sign up list to make sure all of these go out, but we will be sending out links for all of these via the email. Anybody who's interested, you feel free to send us an email to admin@codingnomads.co saying tech talk reminders, or something along those lines. And we'll add you to a list that make sure you get notified of all of our upcoming talks. Just so you guys know, we typically do these every other Thursday. We've been doing them internally for all of our active students for the last 6 months or so. And as of today, we've started to kind of open them up to the greater world and to everyone that's on our email list, etc. So we will, you can essentially expect one of these talks. And on these talks, they're always about different concepts. And one of the things that we're going to be doing a lot moving forward is essentially interviewing developers about their interviewing experience, like what it took for this person to get a job, right? So for instance, if Nikita might at some point, he's an accomplished developer with a ton of experience, so we'd have a speaker, for instance, like Nikita, where we can just ask him questions like, what's the interview like? What's the hardest question you've been asked? What did you do to prepare for interviews? How did you get your first job? Things like that, because we understand that this is a really relevant and important thing for people that are making the career switch. So we're going to be kind of focusing on that a lot with these tech talks every other Thursday. Mark, yes, there will be a video available later. We're going to upload this recording to YouTube, and then we'll share it out with the list, especially with all of the participants. And I see that Kim already mentioned that. Thank you, Kat. It's always nice to get that kind of feedback that we're doing great things, and it's been really fantastic to have you all here. It seems like this was useful to a lot of folks, and so that brings me great joy to see a lot of people here and a lot of chatting, a lot of questions. Are there any other questions before we wrap up, or any other things that anybody would like to mention? Amani, thank you for joining from
No,
Lebanon. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
that was really great, Ryan. I think I wrote in the chat, maybe you guys saw it, that it's I heard you mention dogged determination at least 3 times. And I think that that is really kind of one of the biggest takeaways, whether it be in learning to code, you got to be determined. You got to just pick yourself back up and keep going. And then when you're applying for jobs, you just have to keep applying. You just have to keep reaching out, keep following up. You're probably not going to get a response after one email or one application. You have to follow up and just show that determination through every single thing that you do. And then the interviews, you might bomb an interview. You probably will bomb an interview or two, just like several people have mentioned in the chat. You know, it's very common to get tripped up on these weird questions and things that seem totally irrelevant. And, you know, but again, you just have to keep being determined and you will get a job. There is so much demand for software engineers. And so, you know, if you follow these few steps, get the skills, get a little bit of experience, even if it's working for free for a little bit, and then, you know, and then just keep reaching out, you can really succeed. And we've seen so many people do it, even people with no experience, high school dropouts, no college degree. We've seen a lot of successful people do it. So just keep being determined, dogged determination.
Completely agree. Yeah. Thank you, Kim, for that, and thank you everyone for joining. This has been really great. Stay in touch. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime. If you've got any direct questions or follow-up questions, you can reach me at ryan@codingnomads.co. You can reach us at admin@codingnomads.co. We're here to kind of generally help, and our goal is to build a big community of learners, mentors, educators, everyone here to help each other learn and progress and get those skills and get that job. And so please feel free to reach out and be in touch. And we hope to see you again in our next public tech talk in 2 weeks. And with that, I'll bid you all adieu and thank you again for joining, and wish you all a great rest of your day or night. And we will chat soon.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for joining.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know by liking and subscribing. If there's another topic that you'd like to learn more about, leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. And if you want to become a coding pro, visit our website at codingnomads.co. See you next time.